So for this second trap lead, we're going to be making this. And it just loops like that. So this sound is actually very simple coming straight out of Serum, but all of this processing makes the difference. So here's the sound without all the processing. In Serum, we pretty much just have a straight saw wave, and the envelope 1 is the only thing that is actually changed from the initial patch. So we have standard attack of 0.5 milliseconds, and the decay and the release I just set so that it sounds good when you have short notes as well as long notes, but with too little release, it doesn't have enough basically groove with short notes so that the compressor, which I'll explain later, kind of picks up and stretches out. So the first thing I did for this kind of sound is I added this really short reverb. So let me just turn off everything else. And so that's the sound. And then with the reverb, it sounds like this. I'm also just going to turn on this compressor because the reverb makes it really quiet as it's 90% wet. So the key to this reverb sound is the extremely short pre-delay, the short decay time, and the short size. If I increase all of these parameters, it just loses all of its power and sounds way too washed out. So this is actually a trick I use a lot. Really short reverbs and really wet. It just kind of it widens the sound, but also adds in all of the spin in the chorus, which really kind of like mess up the sound and make them more interesting than just a plain saw wave. So you can take really simple sounds and add this kind of reverb onto them and get cool results. The compressor is pretty standard. I just have a lot of makeup gain, and threshold is just low enough to catch it. The next thing is this simple delay, stock Ableton plugin. I have it on 100% wet and 0% feedback, so it's not really delaying the sound more than once. And the left and right channels are separated by about 18.7 milliseconds. So the left, the left side is only delayed 1 millisecond, and the right is delayed 19.7. So this introduces a really nice stereo effect. Just a really easy way to add stereo width and make it really wide. The next thing I did was a nice EQ8, standard high pass to kind of get rid of the low end at a certain point, obviously. And then a little boost at around 350 hertz, sorry, just to give it some body. That's kind of where the fundamental's sitting, so it really helps kind of make like the main frequency stand out. And then I have a nice, clean, high shelf, basically just brightening it, and also a low pass going really high at about 14K. So without these two bands, it sounds like this. So those just really brought up the hype factor, made the sound a lot more aggressive and wild. Paired with OTT especially, it gets even crazier. after the glue compressor, I actually added another reverb. This time not nearly as wet, and a longer decay time and a bigger size, basically the opposite of the first one we had. And this is just to actually give it space. This one was more of a sound design reverb, and this is more of an actual reverb effect. So without it, it sounds a little bit too dry, but with it, it sounds like it fits with the drums. I think it still sounds pretty cool without this one, but I just added it because it gives it a nice tail. The next thing I added was a standard sidechain just to the clap that we have going on here. Nothing too crazy, just ducking it away from the clap. And this sidechain is going to the kick. And this one isn't so much for headroom, but for groove. So if I turn it off, it pretty much just sounds like the sound is there all the time. But with this sidechain, I actually put it to 30 milliseconds on the release time instead, and this kind of makes it pump, and it gives it nice groove, so check it out. And if I put it on like an extreme release time, you can hear the effect even more. So it makes the kick stand out, but it also makes the sound have like an interesting rhythm to it. And yeah, that kind of completes the sound, I think. The key to the sound as well is not just the processing, but the way that the MIDI goes into the processing. So if I delete all of this cool pitch information, it's kind of cool, but it's also boring compared to the one that we had. When all of these pitch bends run through the reverb kind of does some weird stuff that sounds pretty cool, basically. And these kind of slow pitch bends over here just make it sound really hype, like it's never really riding on one specific note. It's always kind of trailing down. And yeah, I just added some other cool pitch bends for effect. So yeah, that's how you make this kind of sound. So another important part about the sound is this 40 millisecond delay over here, and this just really adds a lot of groove to the sound. So if I take off the delay, which shows up from this window, by the way, turn off all the effects and just listen to it, it doesn't sound as good. And then turn it back on and it sounds way swaggier. This is a really cool effect that you can use in almost any song. I do it with hi-hats a lot, and leads really benefit from it because it makes it way swaggier. It's just what it does. You can really hear the effect shine in the smaller notes, the shorter ones that have like a bouncier rhythm to them. So just make sure with this sound that you have the pitch bend range set to +12, -12, because we have all of these crazy pitch bends going on in the MIDI. If it was set to the default -2, +2, it wouldn't sound nearly as good.